Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Dawson County Board of Commissioners work session. Today's August 19th, 2021. We appreciate your attendance, both in person and those that are with us online. We'll get right into the new business. First up, we have the discussion of request to expand the Department of Family and Children's Services Board by 2 new board member positions. And DFAC's Board Chair Tina Brady is here. Tina, come on up. And they had sent this request in. It does allow that in their bylaws for it to be expanded to 7 members maximum. They have 5 now. You want to go ahead and say what you'd like to say in reference to it?
I actually didn't have anything prepared to say. I was going to be prepared to answer any questions if you guys had any. But I will say that I guess through this past 2 years, we've kind of figured out the importance that it would have to have 2 additional members. This year we learned how sometimes when even just one person's out on our board, what a huge difference it makes, whether it was because of COVID or other things that might have happened. So it made a big difference. The obvious thing I think that Kara tried to say was the impact that we feel it could have to have 2 more people in our community. The board typically, since I've been on, has just had more community members. We're working hard to be sure that we have ones that fill medical, law enforcement, school connections. So we're trying to be sure that we have all of those represented now. So to keep that, to add those in there, it would be very helpful to have 2 more members as well. And I think just would be very helpful just to have more awareness out in the community for more people.
Questions for Tina?
Just a random question. I was in a chamber meeting the other day and somebody mentioned, are you guys consolidating your location in Dawson County or changing anything as far as location goes?
Not location wise. I believe
Okay.
they're locked into their lease for, I think, 9 more years. I think
Okay, alright.
they've got a relatively new lease.
We didn't think that was the case, but somebody just said that they thought that.
Right. Now we had, their director has changed this past year to where we have the sole director, whereas we've been sharing with White County.
Okay.
So we've been extremely thankful for that.
That's even better.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
been thrilled with that. I mean, we've been very thankful for that because we've seen the difference that can make already.
Good.
And we as a board, the ones that we have on our board now have been working hard to think of new ways to be more supportive for our DFACs.
Perfect.
We don't want to just be somebody that come to and get approval on things and things like that. We're wanting to be actively involved in supporting them. And so we welcome any ideas that you guys may have, but we're trying to learn from other counties as well, things that we can do and support them.
Any other questions for Tina? And you'll see in your packet that, as we normally do, they've got 3 applications for these 2 positions, and we asked them to make a recommendation, and they have done so in the packet that you have. And so we can take that up next, 2 weeks from now when we vote. And then just going on to number 2 while Tina's standing there. Presentation of a board appointment for the Department of Family and Children's Service. They're recommending Nikki Mincy replacing Joan Gillen, and that term will be September 21 through June 2026. So I will make that recommendation to you as well, and we'll take that up as well in the next voting session. So if you don't have any further questions for Ms. Tina, thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have presentation of RFI 379-21 radio system upgrade consultant, purchasing manager Melissa Hawk, Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Greg Rowan. Mr. Greg, you gonna do that?
Well, I'm gonna do the first part, yes, sir.
Somebody
I'll
done
do a little
punched you in the eye, huh?
Well, Chris, she gets a little out of hand sometimes, but
Now,
as
Vicky did-
everybody I know
Vicky-
has
Vicky
asked
had a
this
meeting with
question.
y'all. She didn't do that, did she?
No, she didn't do it. No, it's,
Plead the fifth.
I got in a fight with a set of steps.
Okay,
And
and you
and I
lost.
lost. Yeah, the steps did not, or the steps fared a lot better than I did. Oh, goodness, yeah. Of all nights to come up and present something with a big old black eye.
That's your story and you're.
That's my
sticking
story
to it,
anyway,
aren't you?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
I
did
don't
happen on
blame you.
Tuesday
Yeah.
during the rain,
Yeah, there you go.
Is this working? All right, well, I'm here tonight to at least do the first part of this, give you a little bit of background. Of course, the chairman's very familiar with this. He was on the committee back in the day when we upgraded what we currently have. Just a little background information on the radio system, where we're at, and let me back up just slightly more. The reason I'm here is to discuss the hiring, if you will, the consultant. but for this radio project. But to me, history always comes into play with everything we do and every decision we make. So that's what I'm going to cover with this. So for some of the reasons to upgrade the system. So back in the day, back in about 2010 or so, the FCC mandated a change, and that change was to do something called narrowbanding. And narrowbanding basically split the frequencies that we used at the time. And as a result of that frequency split, it caused the radio to not work as good. It didn't transmit as far and things like that. So it did cause us some issues right off the bat. We didn't have any choice though. It was a federal mandate. And as the next slide talks about, I think I'm on that slide, right? Let's see. Okay. The FCC basically says we're going to cut your frequency strength, if you will, or frequency volume in half. And those are some of the reasons. I know you all have that before you there. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. But the long story short is that caused us a lot of grief, and we had to go out and do some modifications to the radio system we'd had in place. And I forget, Mr. Chairman, I believe it was around 1990 or 91 when we went repeated. Do you recall that being the case when we had Amicalola Falls? So we went from the 1990s to 2010, actually 2012 before we made any changes. So back in the day, in the 2012 day, we did have a presentation before the board at the time. Again, Mr. Thurman there was involved with that. And it required, not necessarily required, recommended that we have more than what we got out of it. It's like anything else. We just had the funding at the time to do what we could to create the current system. But the ideal system at the time
Just
was
a little bit more. I'll add to that
Yeah,
just a
please
little
do.
bit. It was
Please do.
actually supposed to have been done in 3 phases at
Right.
that particular time.
Mhm.
And we did all of phase 1 and part of phase 2, and then ran out of money and didn't do the rest of phase 2 or phase 3, which left us in the conundrum that we currently sit in.
Correct. So, and with that, we were actually shorted one site, if you will. We have 3 current sites, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump on this next page. We actually had, that's basically our current configuration of our radio system. Now we have the dispatch, of course, and then we have the 3 sites, the one on Amicalola Falls, the one water tower down on Highway 9 South around the Perimeter Road area, and then the one down there on Lumpy Campground in 400. So those are the 3 current sites. The 4th site that we could not get funding for at the time was to be located somewhere around the Kelly Bridge Coward area, Station 5, Fire Station 5, somewhere in that general area. And of course, we're still using the analog versus the digital versus the modern. We're still in the old
Telephone
days, if you will,
line.
with that. So, sorry.
Telephone line.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the biggest problems I think we have, quite honestly.
It
the
is.
telephone line. So, and with that being said, some of the issues that we do have to this day, and y'all have heard some of these before, but really, in my opinion, that being the number one thing is the telephone lines. Is when it rains, I think it's actually doing it right now. When it rains, the telephone lines get affected, and you would not believe, maybe you would, how many times the radio systems go down or just reduce quality. I know Commissioner Satterfield knows from the field operations side of it as well. So we're dealing with that currently. Some of the other issues we currently have, of course, as listed, the portable radios don't work. The walkie-talkies don't work as good as they should. The ideal coverage rate for any and all radios that we have in the county should be about 95%. That's an industry standard. And I couldn't tell you what we are as part of this project. Should you all decide on the consultant, that's going to be part of their duties, is to determine where we're at now, and of course, what it's going to take to fix that.
I think
of
at
course-
one time that there was some talk about like 75% in part of the area.
That sounds about
Yeah.
right, honestly.
And what we're looking for, as you said, is 95% coverage portable radio, not car.
Not car, right?
But
Portable. Absolutely, yes. Sir. Yeah, the car radios seem to work even to this day for the most part. We do have a few holes in the county, particularly up on the northwest side of the county. We just have some issues even with the car radios. And of course, they're just stronger radios, the car ones are. Lack of coverage inside the buildings, of course, that goes back to the portables. Bleed over is not a huge problem. It's so funny, this was put out and I looked at that and I said, well, bleed over is really not that big of an issue with the SO until yesterday. Strangely enough, as it were, there was someone, it's like they were on a telephone. They got on there and just completely obliterated the conversation. And it was, and again, our radio sites are linked together with telephones. I'm wondering if somehow that just migrated over to the radio. I don't know.
You know,
But it was some guy talking about what was it? Darn. Not a
No.
computer, an ad machine. What am I thinking
yeah,
of?
I know there for a while when we had, before we actually got through the first part of narrowbanding, we had that maintenance company out of somewhere that we could hear every word that they said to
You hear
everybody.
everything.
I mean, when they were going to go flush the toilet over here
Yeah.
or do this over there,
Yeah, you need to go. plunge the
everybody
toilet
that
or,
was
yeah.
in Dawson County's public safety knew all that
Do
information.
every bit of it, every bit of their work orders for the day. Yeah, it was unbelievable. It's gotten better, but we still do have issues with that. And we don't have really enough frequencies to operate on out in the field.
That led to the narrowbanding itself.
That's
the
it.
lack
That
of
actually,
frequencies.
it was supposedly have helped that, but we don't have the repeated, or I'll use the term amplified, to simplify that a little bit, radio tactical channels to work. Like if the fire folks are working a house fire, they need to go to a separate channel. If we're working some horrific whatever or another, we need a side radio channel. We have those, but we don't have the ability. They don't reach out too far. And again, I'm trying to simplify things.
Close range.
Right. Yeah, they're basically for close range. And just a couple other points to make too is it says the inability here to communicate with Hall, Forsyth, and Cherokee and all those folks. One of the biggest problems we had as a result of narrowbanding is if we go to other counties, the sheriff's office goes to the other to other counties to serve arrest warrants, to pick up inmates in other jails, we can't talk on the radio back to Dawson. Once we get down below Highway 20 on 400, our mobile radios in our cars are useless at that point. So we just don't have a way to communicate back to Dawson. If they get in trouble on the way down there, and we do a lot of transports too, down to downtown Atlanta, to cab and things like that. There's no way those radios are going to work down there. So, however, with some of the upgrades, and the consultant can guide us towards that in the future, can hopefully help us with those situations. And then last but not least, a couple of those things, I'm going to basically do away with those on this current slide I'm on. We actually are working on that project as we speak. So I think we're going to be okay with the emergency button. So it'll be a hybrid system, but it'll work temporarily. That's for SO. The fire doesn't have it at this point. So, but anyway, so that's kind of just a quick, brief update, if you will, or where we're at with that, with the actual radio system itself. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions if I can. But Melissa Hawk is going to come up and do the rest of it.
Questions for Greg?
This question for Greg and also the chief, fire chief, because I know I'm inspecting new buildings now, certain size buildings. If the radio doesn't get out, they have to install a repeater in there. Are we doing their frequency also, or just?
So correct. For the fire code, we require a building that is a commercial building. They do their final CO. Part of that is they have to do a radio signal test, produce that to us. And if the test fails, then they're required by fire code to put in what's called a bidirectional antenna.
Is it
That's
helping
to boost-
these guys too?
And it does, it benefits
Okay.
them. Now, the only place that's got it currently is Walmart, because here's the thinking behind that is, if right now with the current VHF and UHF, if we mandate that they put that in there right now, and schools would be an excellent point for the SROs out there. If a year down the road from now, 800 is the choice we go, well, guess what? Now we've got to go back to all of them and say, we're no longer VHF, UHF. Now you got to put in an 800 system, and it's going to cost them about $100,000 to do that. So we're trying to work with the businesses to wait till we can close this radio project, know what system we're going to do with, but we address it with them in the plan review phase right now and say, just know you're going to have to put in a bidirectional antenna.
Other questions for Greg or the chief? Okay, Melissa.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm bringing this to you today because there's multiple departments involved in the project. Back in February, the SPLOST director at that time, Mr. McKee, was directed by you guys to find out what it would cost to hire a system expert consultant. So what we did is we got together, some of the EMS, the E911 and the sheriff's office and myself got together to put together the scope, figure out the best way to get this done. Since there was not a budget assigned at the time, we went ahead and did a request for information, but we did follow the procedures of a request for proposal, have an evaluation criteria, evaluation percentages, and made them keep their cost away from their technical so that we could evaluate it just like we would if it was another sealed solicitation. We did also put inside that document that the board does have the right and is reserving that right to professionally exempt the services and go into a contract with someone that you choose. Although directly from the RFI, there would not be an award. Okay. And we also determined at that time who was going to be on the evaluation team. And from the sheriff's office, that was going to be, oh, I'm off of here. Sorry about that. We did have 7 responses. And of course, we followed our rules and regulations, like I said. So we decided that the evaluation team would be made up from the sheriff's office, would include Major Rowan and Captain Goody. From the fire would be, and the EMS would be Chief Thompson and Division Chief Dooley, the E911 Director, Kristen Bean, and then myself, I was the facilitator. During the middle of this, we had a consultant, Tom Harder, who's here tonight, who is actually a Dawson County resident and an engineer who was not going to want to do the project, but would like to be part of it. He came in actually as a donated services consultant. He was not allowed to actually score, but he did come to the office and look at all of the technical responses. And he came to the in-person presentations that we had with our top 3 consultants. And those top 3 consultants were CTA Consulting, Federal Engineering, and TUSA Consulting. Some of the highlights, that I'm not going to go over everything, but some of the highlights that we had in that scope for task 1 was to evaluate all the county radio systems. And they were to evaluate the capacity requirements to support operations over the next 10 years. They wanted to have a system identified that could hold up to at least 13 channels, identify both the P25 portable VHF and the 800 megahertz plans that the consultant would be presenting to the board, so it could be decided which direction that we would go for the actual upgrade. The task 2 would be the project plan design report phase. And all of this would be put together during that phase to bring up the detailed design plan. And that would also include the budget estimates. The task 3 is the procurement phase. That's where I would work together with that consultant, taking all of his specifics for the equipment and the actual labor itself, and make sure that would be in the RFP so that we would get the system that we wanted at whatever the board decided. And the last phase would be the support and implementation phase. He would actually act as a project manager alongside with Major Rowan, who would be the county employee project manager, to make sure we get what we need. As I said, we had 7 offers received. What we did is, like I said, we followed the request for proposal process, and we opened only technical, and we graded the technical, and engineering, federal engineering came right up there at top along with TUSA Consulting, and CTA was up there as well. So that's where we brought them in and we did the in-person interviews. And then after that, we opened the the cost. And once all of that was put together, federal engineering came out on top with 80 points. Their total cost is $168,554. And that is after a negotiation, the reduction of 3.5%. Staff respectfully requests that the board accept the information that we received during that process to determine the funds to utilize for services, hopefully to professionally exempt the services of federal engineering, and to enter into an agreement to perform all the tasks of the RFI, not to exceed the amount of $168,554. I did put in there a little tidbit about the timeline. Federal engineering's project timeline is approximately 24 months. And we would definitely work task 2 through 4 during the same time as we're building the construction of our new EOC. We did talk to finance for recommendation for the funding, and they came with 2 options. One being the SPLOST 6 collections and the other coming out of the general fund balance and being placed in a capital project fund.
That's the money for the,
I'm so sorry.
that's the money for the consultant.
That's the money for the consultant.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Questions for Melissa?
Do you decide when it's so close, like Federal Engineering 81 and PALLAN Associates 80?
Their pricing has a lot to do with that. If you look at the technical score and then the cost score, Palin actually received 20% because they were the lowest at 103,000,
Mhm.
but they also were almost the lowest at the technical, which meant
okay.
their pricing kind of matched with what they could do for us.
Yeah. Oh,
So when you look at what their actual technical is, along with the cost, that's who you determine who is going to be your best overall. Such as Tusa, they were at 74
mhm.
as far as technical, but their price was astronomical, 365,000 overall versus 168. So you almost are putting those costs together, the technical and the cost, and evaluating that down
Mhm.
and getting to an actual total score. And Federal Engineering had that total score the highest.
Other questions for Melissa?
I don't have a question, but it seems like a couple, 24 months ago or so, Tom and myself and I think the sheriff and Danny all sat in a room and kind of went through, I think Billy was there too, went through some of this, but I just want to thank Tom for helping us, guiding us through this and,
Yes.
and dedicating your time and your knowledge. I know you have a wealth of experience with it and just appreciate that and appreciate staff's time of coming together and making this thing and a reality. It's been in the works for, ever since Billy's been around, which has been a minute, but
Couple of them,
we're finally getting moving in the right
Watch
direction.
it,
So thank
watch
you.
couple of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, next up, we have presentation of RFP 368-21 Design Build Services for 2 artificial infield grass services. Park and Rec Director Matt Payne and Purchasing Manager Melissa Hall. Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you on behalf of the Recreation Department again. So it's always good to come. Yes, it is time to get to work on our turf fields that we've been putting on, not really putting off, but we've been working on for quite a good while. We're really excited. This is an exciting day for the Recreation Department because this is such a wonderful thing. If you'll notice on our slides, if you'll remember in May of 2021, the board approved some SPLOST funds in the amount of 1.595 million to go to Recreation Department. One of these projects was the installation of the synthetic grass fields on the 2 ball fields at Rock Creek Park. So that was done in May of 2011. A request for proposal was released. We did the entire Ms. Hawk did this entire project for us, did a wonderful job. As I said, this was done according to policy. As much as I wanted to expedite things and move very fastly, Ms. Hawk would not let us. So she was very, very thorough. So I say that to say this was well, I was
Doing her job.
I was quite impressed with
Keeping
her
us out of
thoroughness.
trouble.
That's exactly right.
Mhm.
But again, it was done according to policy. Again, not wanting to go through all of the scope of work, but we did want to make sure that you understood that we specified that one general contractor would be contracted for all the work required. Some of the highlights of the scope of work include the preliminary design phase, the draft drawings for the work to be done, to be performed, the material is going to be a certain standard. The storm and erosion control plans will be developed during this phase. The detailed design phase will be done during this phase. The final design phase, approving the drawings, detailed construction estimates. All of this will be done during this particular time frame. The construction phase is going to be a turnkey project, and it's going to be 125 days. That's what we're shooting for with these guys. There will be an 8-year manufacturer's warranty. and an additional 1-year warranty on this product. The total contract, if you'll notice at the bottom, the total contract is for 6 months, 180 days. And that's from the date of the notice of to proceed and to the final turnkey. So we anticipate starting in this fall and it being a good fall, winter construction project. So we can really jump right into the spring full blast. I think this next slide shows the pictures of the 2 particular ball fields that we're doing. These are the 2 rectangular fields on the backside of Rock Creek Park. We call them field 1, field 2. There's actually 3 fields there. We're only doing the bottom 2 right now. We did just install the berm and the berm worked perfectly yesterday or 2 days ago when the big rain hit, because the creek did come over quite significantly, but the berm did what it's supposed to do. Even with that, we chose to not do field 3 right now until we're just 100% sure that we would never have any flooding issues up on top right there. So we're doing field 1 and field 2, and this is a picture of field 1 and field 2. Those will look amazing when they are done. We did receive 4 bids or 4 offers, with Sprint Turf being the lowest at 1.1, let's see, $1,100,040 for the turnkey project. This other this slide details the other companies that bid on this project and their pricing. And I think I can speak for my team and to say that I think that we were all in agreement that all 4 of these companies were really top notch, and we would have gotten a quality product from any one of them. But with this very significant price difference, we decided that Sprint Turf was our best option. And I think that they will do a fantastic job. And I think this next slide pretty much details that. This was the summaries of scores. As Ms. Hawk has stated, we did the technical first. We looked at all the aspects first before she would allow us to look at the number. And so we did our due diligence. She did her due diligence. And when it came out, we noticed you could throw a blanket over all 4 of them. Very, very close. And we really put a lot of time and effort into making sure that they would be a quality product for us, but with a significant difference in pricing, $400,000, Sprint Turf was our best option. And finally, it is the recommendation of the Recreation Department staff, the team that we put together to do this analysis, and of course, Melissa, that we request that the board to accept the proposal submitted and to award the contract to Sprint Turf in the amount of $1,100,040 with a contingency of $110,004, and the total amount not to exceed the amount of $1,210,044. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Point of clarification for those that are online that might not have seen the slides, you refer to them as ball fields, but they're soccer fields.
They are soccer fields. They are rectangular fields. One more point of clarification. If you'll notice on the agenda, it actually says the artificial grass. Some people may look at that and still get confused with it still being a grass field. These are artificial turf. This is no longer grass at all.
Other questions for Matt?
Is it gonna be a multi-purpose, or are they gonna be permanently marked, or can
No.
you change the mark?
No, sir. We will be able to change these markers. They will have what they're called ticks. They will
Yeah.
have the ticks in them that will have standard lines that you pull the strings and do the lines. But these are the types of fields that we can do anything on, and we put our own markings on. So they're not going to have anything that is permanent that would keep us from doing
So
anything
you
on.
could do football,
We can do
lacrosse, soccer.
anything on these ball fields. Yes.
Good, good. I guess the other question, now we had 1.5 million. Was that to do the 3 fields, or that was to do the 2?
That was to do the 2 fields at this time.
So,
SPLOST 7, we added some of those extras into SPLOST 7. The extra monies that was on this was a couple of other projects that we're working on right now, including the berm that was just finished and a couple of other small projects.
I
But
think that
this,
project we got on there is the Miracle Field.
yes,
We know, I know, just another subject. Do we know about what that probably would cost?
in my very brief research, we're looking at about 250,000 per ball field for a baseball field. Because they're smaller, of course, and they wouldn't require as much in the material. So that small field, and we're going to use one of the T-ball fields for that. I would imagine, again, this is just an educated guess, you could probably do it right at the 200,000 number. And I think we
I'd like to see
budgeted,
that, yeah.
I think we budgeted quite a bit more in the SPOS 7 just to make sure, but I think you can get them done fairly cheap, not cheaply, but relatively.
Okay.
Are you aware firsthand of the work that's Spin? I want to say spin. I'm gonna say spin.
Yes, ma'am. Sprint turf.
Yeah, are you?
I have,
$400,000 is kind of a big
and,
spread in.
and I don't know if it's a volume that they do just more than everybody else, but they come highly recommended. I have a number of colleagues all over North Georgia, but especially in my home county of Forsyth County, and I know all those guys well. And the deputy director is Mr. Tommy Bruce, and Tommy has helped me through this process enormously. And he has used Sprint Turf to build probably 25 fields. And he's, he said that
He
they're,
has been there a while.
yes, ma'am. He has been my guiding light through this process.
I
Yes.
taught him in the 6th grade, so you see this and this, it's been a long time.
Well,
So he knows what he's doing.
You must have done a great job. man.
Oh, I did. I couldn't-
Yes.
No, I did.
But to answer your
But
question,
he knows
yes.
what he's doing.
Yes,
is
all of my
point.
colleagues that I have spoken with in the recreation world have all said, and the high school world, if you'll notice any of the Georgia high schools, they're all going to these artificial turfs for their rectangular fields. And all of those would say that Sprint Turf has done wonderful for them.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Other questions for Matt? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have presentation of update to subdivision regulations. Planning and Development Director Jamison Kennedy. Jamison has made a request that we move that 2 weeks. They got some information in late that they want to get into the presentation before they actually make the presentation. So if it's all right with you, we'll just move that to the next work session, whenever that is, September 2nd. Y'all good with that? All right.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Next up, we have presentation of an ordinance amending chapter 30 of the Code of Dawson County to establish a mechanism whereby county residents may petition the Board of Commissioners for the creation of special tax districts to fund capital improvement projects. That's not Ms. Davis, so I'll have to let him introduce himself.
Yes, I'm gonna let my associate Aaron Meyer present this. He's been working with Dave on this in great detail. So,
Yeah, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Like Angie said, I'm in her office. I've worked with Dave a good bit on this. So the issue we were trying to tackle is, my understanding, there are certain areas that may not have road paving where the local residents would like to have paving, or there may be other capital projects such as water lines, sewer lines, anything of that nature that would benefit a discrete geographic area. And the goal was to find a way for the county to finance this through tax revenues collected specifically on those properties. Like I said, these would be projects that specifically benefit a discrete geographic area. Otherwise, you would use countywide taxes. So the Georgia law allows counties to create special tax districts. The Board of Commissioners can do this anytime it wants to by resolution. You simply declare that a discrete geographic area will become a special service district, and you define which services you're going to provide, which could include capital improvements. And you can levy a new millage rate only on those properties, or you could levy a one-time special assessment on those properties that would be due and payable immediately and collected over time. Alternatively, you could do fees. But what we were after was more of a community-driven approach, where the actual residents in this area, if there's an improvement that they want, rather than the Board of Commissioners imposing the tax and the service on them, they can come together, get a petition signed by 70% of all of the properties who will be in that special district, and then present it to the Public Works Director. The Public Works Director would then review the petition, determine if it's viable and feasible. And if it's got the signatures, it's something that could be funded through tax revenues. It would then get approved by the Public Works Director, and it would go to the Board of Commissioners. Board of Commissioners would hold a hearing, and assuming that this is a project that the board supports, You would then at that point create the special tax district and decide how it's going to be funded. And like I said, this could be either through an additional millage rate that would go on year to year until the project's paid, or it could be a one-time assessment where, on the very next tax bill, they would see this assessment placed on their property, and it would remain there as a lien on the property until paid. Those are the two options. And again, this is not limited to roads. This could be any type of capital improvement. And what we've done in this ordinance is we've designed it in such a way that the individuals who are completing the petition get to tailor the project the way they want. This is to encourage buy-in. If they're going to ask their neighbors to pitch in and fund some project, it should really be something that improves everybody. So they need to do the legwork, getting the petition together. At that point, county staff reviews this to make sure that this is actually a feasible project. Some initial reviews, some initial work can be done at that stage just to make sure that this is something that could be accomplished. And then the third objective of this was not to limit or tie the hands of the Board of Commissioners in any way. Ultimately, this is a legislative decision that you make. And again, you could make it with or without the petition. You could simply decide that there's going to be a special district, and we didn't want to curtail your authority to do that in any way. So at the end of the day, regardless of what comes out through this petition process and through staff review, the Board of Commissioners still has full discretion in what the project will include, what properties will be involved in it, and whether or not taxes will be used to fund it. One of the things we explored along the way was whether or not we could get financing tied into this. So let's say that someone comes forward with a project, the county's excited about it, the property owners are excited about it, but based on a reasonable millage rate, the funds wouldn't be available for, say, 5 years. Is there a way to get funding so that we could break ground on something like this immediately? We explored a lot of options, but the county's hands are really tied when it comes to debt. Ultimately, if you're going to assume debt for a project like this, it needs to be tied with a voter approval. So in this case, if we were going to issue debt to do a specific project in a specific geographic area, at the next election, or you could call a special election, the property owners within that special district, and only those property owners, would have the opportunity to vote, and they could decide to incur that debt in addition to the tax. That's not specifically called for here in the ordinance because it doesn't need to be a part of the ordinance. I just wanted to explain that that's a funding option that's available depending on the projects that come on down the line. And I think that summarizes what this accomplishes. If any of you have any questions about the specific ordinance or anything of that nature, I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions from the board?
So the time frame. So we as a board can set where it's 5 years, 10 years, or do we put that in ordinance? We got the 75% of the buy-in for the residents, but do we put the time frame in there?
It would depend on the type of tax. So a millage rate is set every single year.
Right.
So you couldn't set a millage rate for the next 10 years because what you would essentially be doing is tying the hands of boards of commissioners that come after you.
So if you got 100 people on 75, you divide the 75 by the cost of, or you divide the 100 by the cost to assess each, I guess you would assess each property owner that amount.
That's right. So the two ways to do it, one would be the one-time special assessment. This board says, here's the cost, and we're going to assess this tax on everybody. The tax would be due and payable that year in full. The other possibility would be to spread it out over a certain number of years. And although you couldn't require a certain tax to be imposed in future years, I'm assuming that the board would continue to levy that tax in that special district, just like you would for a special district fire tax or something of that nature. So each year you have to specifically decide the millage rate that special district would receive. But pragmatically, that special millage rate should be enough to fund the project within the time frame that the board's decided on.
And I guess the second question I had on funding, could we, and I guess this would be a Vicky question too, is, instead of taking just out of general fund, which I know it'll come out of general fund, but set a certain amount that we will spend each year, where it's 500,000, million or whatever. And, you got one group coming one year, you might have 10 groups coming the next year. And if you exceed that money, they need to wait till the next year. I mean, can you set this amount that you're going to spend each year and have it in a fund designated for special projects or tax districts or whatever?
So that's more of an accounting question, and I think the best practice would be for each special district to be kept inside of its own account. You always can borrow from one fund to another, but I think the better practice would be to isolate each special district into its own account. And when those funds come in, once it hits a certain threshold, the staff can decide that, okay, at this point, we can realistically proceed with the project.
I'll wait till next year.
That's right.
Yeah, instead of sit, so that'd probably be better, instead of setting a specific amount to spend every year, then we could see where we actually are as a board of commissioners and what we can afford to do.
Because it's still got to come to us for a vote
Right.
to accept it or not. So instead of setting them out, we could just look at what we,
Each one of them, yeah,
each one of them. separate.
individual.
I get another question, funding. So if the development authority has an area, they want infrastructure in water, sewer, roads, whatever, pad ready. They bring a group in. Can they get grants or something to help fund this? The payback or not fund it, but pay back the payments?
Yeah, well, so most development authorities can issue debt without a referendum. That's why they exist. So in most cases, what I've seen is a development authority would incur the debt on the property, develop the property, and then pay down the bonds as they sell off the.
But could we
parcels.
fund it as a county fund that, like I said, if it's several property owners in the industrial area that come before us and say they want to get roads paid or water or sewer put in. And yeah, we say, yeah, we got the money that year, we're gonna take on that project. And they apply for a grant to pay it off. Can they do that?
I'm not sure I exactly
Well,
understand.
I guess if it's, say it's 5 property owners in an industrial area, they want to improve this industrial area. They come to us, have a petition, we say it's $2 million, and we approve it. But then the development authority says, yeah, this is gonna be a nice place, we can, go out and get some new tenants to come in. We apply for a grant, can they get the money and then turn around and pay it off? For those 5 property owners?
That'd be an
Well,
intergovernmental.
Probably not.
So,
It's a separate type thing.
Separate transaction, okay.
yeah, so.
Because you're taxing the property owners and you're asking the development authority to pay it. So it's two separate.
Yeah. it'd be
Yeah,
separate.
here's what I'm worried about when you're asking the question, is a gratuity issue. If the property is owned by private individuals and the county's using public funds to do it, there's a problem. But what about this scenario? The people come together, they bring the petition, and the board imposes a special assessment on the property. So we know that taxes are going to come in, right? Because there's now a lien on the property. There's a tax bill that's been issued. Could the county then borrow general funds to begin that project and then repay it from the special district when the taxes come in? I think you could do that.
General funds, not new debt.
Yes, that would be
General fund.
general funds. That is, you were essentially spending money now, knowing that the tax revenue is going to come in at the end of the year or soon thereafter.
Are there counties close to us who have these special tax districts?
None. This is entirely
None.
new.
I want you to tell me if everybody did.
No, this is entirely new. So there
Oh.
are some cities that have this, but Georgia law has a specific statute giving cities the power to do this. But that is because there's no constitutional authority for a city to do this otherwise. For counties, there's a specific constitutional section that allows counties to create special districts. And so everything that's occurring in this ordinance is happening under the county special district authority. So you have the power, every county in the state has the power to do it, but no one has done this yet. And I
You
don't
mean
know
Forsyth
why.
County hasn't done this?
It sounds like a great idea. And when
Well, the
we
fire
were
district.
presented with the problem of,
That was voted.
Okay.
Forsyth County has a fire district, but that was voted on by the citizens.
yeah,
I can clarify. I think you're speaking specifically about road districts
Yes.
because there are street lamp districts and
Oh.
certainly fire tax districts. But as to roads, we're
Mhm.
not aware of any other county. I think Dave
Okay.
brought this to us from a Florida experience. can apply for a lot of different services, but we haven't seen it in the road context.
Right. Nor,
But in
nor,
other things you have.
Street lights, fires, a fire tax district is very common.
It is.
yeah. And the petition driven approach is mainly what I was thinking.
Oh,
of.
okay,
That's
and that is
completely
different
new.
too. I don't, yeah.
Yeah,
agree.
and again, you could do this without the petition, right? But what we were doing is coming up with a solution to get community involvement and have them involved in the process, because what we're really doing is special districts are normally done on a much larger scale. So your fire districts, you would break up the county into several large fire districts. What we're contemplating here is a much smaller district, maybe the size of a development. And if we're going to create a special district with that intimate of relationship to the property, it's a good idea to get their buy-in on the start, have them come forward and request it through a petition, go through plan review with the county staff, then have the board ultimately decide whether or not the county supports it. So that's new, but it's not a stretch of the county's constitutional authority by any means. It's well within the county.
Now, those people who don't want to sign this petition, they're still taxed, kicking and screaming.
That is
They're
correct.
still, okay.
If you get to 75%.
Mhm.
Well, and
But
I
the
think
other-
to Aaron's point, excuse me, Commissioner, is we could do it under our constitutional authority without a petition if we
Yes.
so chose.
Yeah.
So,
We're doing the petition to get the buy-in because it's something they want done.
Mhm, mhm.
And the projects are not on us. It's on the community to come up with those ideas and projects. So it's not like us going out there and strong arming saying you need to do this. It's that particular tax district or whatever you want to call it is coming to us saying,
Oh, okay.
this is what we'd like to do. The majority, this is what we'd like to do, or the 60 or 70%, whatever that number was.
I think it's the 75.
Other questions?
Is there a difference on this? I know when we've talked about it, we've talked about for, like an industrial park that needed the road paid where the road was private. And the property owners could get together and this would help spread the cost out. Does the road have to be public or private? Is there any distinction in there? Does it matter if, say, a neighborhood that had a county road that we didn't have the funds to pave, if they wanted to, decided they all wanted new asphalt, could they petition for that as well?
It needs to be a public road. So if you have a subdivision, the county has accepted responsibility for maintaining the roads and say they're currently unpaved and that you would want them to be paved. That's the kind of project that this would work for.
So it would not work for a private road.
That's right, because it is tax money benefiting private property. And so we're worried about the gratuity clause there.
Yeah, because I thought that was kind of the whole point.
That's kind of the reason we want
We
it.
wanted it to do.
Most people's approached us as a private road or gravel road or industrial road that's private. And that's
They,
the ones
you,
that
you
approach us.
couldn't charge like a interest rate or anything like a loan in order to get, to make sure it's not we're not handing them out money for free. I mean, we're,
Tax.
it's just a function. I
They're,
mean,
they're
where that
paying
gratuity-
for it, but it only benefits that district.
That's the majority that's approached us
Yeah,
as
that's-
private
That's the whole issue.
gravel roads.
Yeah. Other people take over the public road.
Yeah.
And this may be something we need to discuss a little bit more and maybe do some work. Dave just mentioned having as part of the process where they would dedicate the roads to the county at the end of the project. That's something we can potentially explore, but it's not something we've explored yet.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks for
Good
the
to
work.
meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have discussion of uses of American Rescue Plan funding. County Manager David Headley. David.
Good afternoon, Commission and Chairman. It's been a long time coming. I'm sure there's been a lot of questions about when we were going to talk about this $5-point-something million. It's been a bit of a moving target along the way. One day you think you got it nailed down, and next thing you know, we get another printout from ACCG that changes things. So how do we spend it? Where do we go with it? So the county will receive for the public purpose $5,071,173. All uses have to be contracted by 2024 and expended by 2026. We've already received half of the funding. The other half is expected to be released next year about this time. So the use of these funds is stricter than the CARES funding that we received a little over a year ago. There really wasn't any restriction to that. It's here you go, and we documented wages, those kind of things. However, this is a little different animal, if you will. There's a lot of reporting that needs to be done and a lot of recording. So, the focus of this funding is to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on the county and to provide financial resources to the county in areas of need. And I'm going to go a little more into that with the PowerPoint that you're going to see here. And I'm a little more challenged than everybody else, so she's going to take care of the clicker there. Kristen will. So anyway, Dawson County Award. The award was based on population and received directly from the U.S. Treasury. Dawson County received an award of $5,071,173. We have received to date $2,535,586.50. Right now, we've got an interest on that, been in the account of $430. So it's already drawn money for us. But the remainder should be distributed next year, as I stated. And restrictions on this money are much tighter than the CARES Act as stated, funding that was received in 2020. The county must have the funds obligated. Keyword, they've got to be obligated by December 31st of 2024 and expended by December 31st of 2026. Covers eligible costs from March the 3rd of 21 through December 31st of 24. The statutory eligible uses, according to the interim final rule, was that to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative impacts, economic impacts, which could be to deficient areas, businesses that, needed that. But anything towards the economic development that might have been impacted by loss of revenue by COVID-19. To respond to the workers performing essential work during COVID-19 health emergency by providing premium pay, which we'll go into a little bit more. For the provision of government services to the extent the reduction in revenue of such recipients due to the COVID-19 health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior. And then to make necessary investments in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure. So we go to the next slide and you see that Dawson County has lost the loss of revenue due to COVID-19, $1,898,552.51. Carl Vinson Institute, as you can see there on their scale there, goes into the actual formula of how that is calculated. And you can see that on their slide. So the chairman's proposal, and the chairman will speak to this. So correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman, but to provide a premium pay to sheriff's officers, 104 officers at $3 per hour at a cost of $767,606. The E911 staff, 14 employees at $2 per hour at a cost of $65,607. And then firefighter EMTs, 28 full-time at a cost of $176,382. Firefighter EMTs, 8 part-time at a cost of $11,246. And then we roll in cost to previous increases for paramedics approved in April at a cost of $238,067 plus $2 per hour med unit pay, which was $75,593. The total cost of this proposal is $1,334,503 for 1 year.
If I can
Sure, yes, sir.
add into right there is, like I said, this money can roll all the way through 2024.
That's
So
correct.
I'm multiplying that number by 3
Yes, sir.
and also adding in the remainder of this year,
Yes, sir.
the remaining 8 pay periods of this year. So that total comes to $4,443,896.01. So that would leave about 656,000 of revenue, but I got something else I want to talk about in reference to that as well. But this is going to be the proposal I'm going to make to the board as we look at pay raises for our sheriff's department and our other employees later on tonight. And as a method for us to be able to fund that for the next 3 years without having to take it out of the general fund. And the object for that is to make sure that we are able to stay competitive in the job market for all of our public safety people that we have, maintain a stable workforce. As the board is well aware, we have had difficulty in all of our public safety agencies and keeping people there. And this gives us, like I said, the funding mechanism for those increases for the next 3 years plus the remainder of this year. And it gives the board an opportunity to gather up additional revenue over that 3-year period to be able to take this going forward and move forward. And so, and what I also want to talk a little bit about adding public works to that as well. Public Works is classified as a public safety agency nationally now. And we have had issues in maintaining a public works staff. And so I ran some numbers on that and provided those to you on the back of the sheet that I gave you earlier, which would add another $265,294 over a 3-year period, over that 3-year plus period. And then that would leave $390,811 of the ARPA funding. And David and I have had this conversation, and I told David, I said, go ahead and present what you have. This is what I'm going to recommend to the board, but I wanted him, give him an opportunity to also make his recommendation as well.
So,
Can I clarify something?
Go ahead.
The EMTs, so it's $2 an
$2
hour.
an hour for them.
It doesn't say it on the slide.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that. That's $2.
$2 an hour, $3 an hour for the 104 sheriff deputies, $2 an hour for 911, $2 an hour for firefighter EMT. You already saw what we did for firefighter paramedic. That would just be rolled into it. And I'm also going to recommend $2 an hour.
Right.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so, but with that discussion, there are some restrictions on the premium pay.
Yep.
So looking at this slide here, we've identified a few of those. Each person can only receive an aggregate of up to $25,000. The county will have to provide justification to the United States Treasury for providing premium pay to anyone making more than $79,116.15 per year. If premium pay results in an employee earning more than $37.46 per hour, written justification must be provided to the U.S. Treasury. So this is going to be a monitoring, obviously a monitoring issue for finance. Under the ARP, there is no presumption that all public safety and public health personnel are primarily dedicated to responding to COVID, and that counties must document and prove the extent to which the activities are dedicated to COVID. So it's not going to be a matter like the last round that we got where you pretty much got it and you said you identified it as, yeah, that was COVID related. Here, we're going to have to provide that to the U.S. Treasury, those records and things that were specifically for that. So under my proposal that the chairman and I spoke about, in addition to what he's proposing to the commission, is that to provide a one-time contribution. I know we listed it as a bonus, but I like the contribution more to all the employees. Per the ACCG, many counties issuing premium pay by this method are documenting via BOC action that all county employees are essential. We've had to make adjustments, in our different departments on how our daily functions are, but everybody's essential. So I've broken it down here, and you can see on the slide that there's really, when you look at the full-time, there's 296, part-time regular 89, part-time temporary, poll workers, volunteer firefighters, supplementals, grants. That's a total of 543 employees. The full-time employees would receive a $2,000 contribution. The part-time would receive $1,000. Part-time temporary poll workers, volunteer firefighters, 500, a supplement of 500, and then grants at 1,000. And then, so the total cost of all that equals out to $770,000. That, as the chairman mentioned, there is some residual left over from his proposal that may be considered, in this area. Adding a 10% for FICA, you're looking at about 77,000. So the total would be $847,000 for the one-time payout. So setting aside the funding for COVID cases, last year, employees who had to quarantine or tested positive for COVID were provided with the FRCCA leave. That program ended last year, so there's no more of that FRECA. So the set aside $100,000 to assist employees who test positive for COVID to provide COVID leave, so they will not have to utilize their PTO. This would only apply to those who provide a positive test, not those who quarantine. So in some areas, counties are allowing a 40-hour, for example, 40 hours to go towards that leave, so that if somebody comes down and they have the results and all, and they're quarantined or they have to stay home, they get up to 40 hours of that time. In many cases, as we've done last year, we've had those employees that were able to work from home, were able to continue working while going through their quarantine period. But it has to apply to those that provide a positive test and not those who just quarantine. So other uses that have been discussed throughout this pamphlet is that the county may elect to use this funding for investments in broadband, water, and sewer. I know the chairman has just looked at providing support letters for a couple grants that are.
Yeah, we have been contacted by Etowah Water and Sewer. We've been contacted by LJ Phone.
Yes, sir.
And then also by Windstream for the governor's office had many other millions of dollars that these people could apply for in grants. Broadband, I think, was around $300 million. So we were contacted in reference to providing letters of support to Etowah Water and Sewer, as well as Windstream, as well as ETC. Now, I did send y'all an email in reference to Etowah Water and Sewer, and I'm going to be asking you to, after a while, to agree for me to sign letters for all three of these institutions to apply for grants. Now, as David said, you do have the ability, if you so desire, to put some of this $5 million that we got, but you're not required to do that for them to apply for these grants. And I want to go back to just a little bit about the money for all of our employees. Yes, we do consider every employee essential. There's no doubt about that in the county, but I would propose to you as a board that beyond this here, we would take care of the rest of our employees in the general fund regular budget that we're setting for 2022. That we would, and these people that we would be taking care of through this grant money, that would be what they're going to get for the remainder of this year and all of 2022 as well. And we would only be looking at the remainder of our employees and doing something for them through our general fund. And if we wanted to use some of this remaining 390,000 towards what David said there in reference to when people actually have a positive test, I wouldn't have an issue with that either.
So as early as this afternoon, I received from a court administration who's looking and requesting that we consider some of this funding to be for pretrial officer position, which is about $51,503. And then upgrades to courtroom C, which is about 45,000. So that's.
And you will see both of
haven't
those
seen-
requests in the regular
Yeah.
budget as well.
As well, yes.
Yeah.
That's correct. So other funding available from the state. The additional funding can be requested from the state of Georgia through a state physical recovery fund. This funding has to be applied for by August 31st, 2021, including project descriptions and estimated cost. These projects must be for water, sewer, or infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, and negative economic impact projects. So as you can see, there's a kind of a variety of things. We have a key date sheet, whereas as of August the 31st, which we're fast approaching, is the first interim report due to the U.S. Treasury. So we're kind of looking for direction from the board as to, maybe what direction we want to kind of proceed in, so we can at least get a preliminary placeholder in there for this. And then those first recovery plan performance report is due in August the 31st of 2021. Along with that, that goes to the U.S. Treasury. Only counties above 250,000 though in population have to follow that guideline. October the 31st of 21 is the first quarterly project expenditure report due to the U.S. Treasury from all counties. And then December the 31st of 2024, ARP funds must be obligated. And then December the 31st of 26, ARP funds must be spent and all work performance must be completed. So we do have deadlines in which we have to meet. And really that concludes this presentation. I do want to thank Vicki and her staff for putting things together. She's attended a lot of this, online classes as some of her staff. They've done an excellent job of tracking this. So thank you to her and her staff, and be able to try to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for
Vicki
David?
is here to answer any financial.
Just a comment. I also want to thank Vicki for helping me with the numbers that I'm proposing to you that we spend this money on as well. I don't really know what we would do without her, so I don't want to ever find out while I'm here. So you have to stay as long as I stay. That's just the way it is.
I think this is a good way to spend the money, but, and I know y'all have done a lot of research on this. Is there any reason that we shouldn't take this money? Are there any kind of strings attached to it or anything? Or is it pretty well just, what they kind of blanket give to the counties?
Well, I will say this, that, and sometimes, grants look very attractive to take and all, but they're very, cumbersome and time to manage. I think, and Vicki can speak to this as well, I think it is going to be a recording and reporting project that will take some time, but I didn't see anything, at least I don't recall, I don't know if Vicki did, that says we have to take it or not take it.
There's not. I mean, you could give it back, but I don't think that'd be a wise move.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, is there, I know how the federal government,
Yeah.
how they operate, just, I wouldn't want to take something and then start pulling strings is all I'm saying. I definitely do not want to give it
Well, again,
back.
going back to what I said earlier, I think the biggest thing is going to be the reporting.
It's
The
Vicki.
reporting of
You
it.
know, the US to the US Treasury. I don't know what kind of enforcement action they're going to have on
Yeah.
that, or anything along those lines, but.
So who's ultimately responsible for? Is there one person, you or you?
District 1 Commission.
I resign immediately.
Well, I mean, my only concern is that, we stay within the guidelines that we've been given of how we can spend this money. And as long as we stay within those guidelines, then we shouldn't have problems. Now, if you decide you're going to buy a jet plane or something, we probably would be, getting a letter from the U.S. Treasury saying, you owe us back $5 million. So,
Oh, I was gonna say that.
but other than that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have any trouble staying within the guidelines.
No,
At
but I
a,
know it's tedious. I mean, dot every I and cross every T.
That is it.
at a macro level, it disgusts me how much money that the feds have thrown at some of this stuff. And it's our future debt that's out there, and that's for a different conversation. But I think that we've also seen at a macro level, the degradation of frontline employees, particularly in sheriff's departments, and the mentality across America has changed, and it's probably take money out of the equation. Just the mentality of being that frontline employee or frontline worker has changed drastically. And so while it does disgust me to see how much money the feds are spending, I think we have the responsibility to use the money in a manner that fixes an issue that we have. And I think this is a great way for Billy's proposal and combined with Dave's points to be able to address some major issues that we have. And it buys us some additional time. I mean, it gets us several years down the road. We've been fortunate to get grants in, what was the name of the Safer grant? It's similar, and the way I see it is, it funded some positions up front that filled some needs immediately, and then we had to work our way into funding that on our own. And so I think this gives us an opportunity to do that in a good way to spend.
Well, the thing about it is too, and there is a lot of legwork to it, obviously. But if you give it back, they're gonna give it to somebody else. The 26,000 people who live here paid federal tax. So we want to get as much of that back as possible to work towards their benefit. And I think that's what this does for us.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to give it back, but the only reason that I wouldn't want to take it is if it give the federal government some cause to come in and mandate some decision that we might make in the future. And as long as nothing there with that, I would not, I'm like Chris. I don't see where the money comes from when they give it to us, but we have to take
They
it.
just generate.
Yeah.
It's called debt,
Debt, it's debt.
generational
Debt of
debt.
debt. Generational debt. But, I've always said the whole time that I've been in Dawson County, public safety, whatever, they're gonna give this money to somebody. We need to get as much of it as we possibly can for ourselves. And when I became chairman, that was one of the things that I instructed all of the departments at that time is put in for grants. If it's something you're gonna need and you want us to pay for anyway, if we can get 50% of it through a grant, then why wouldn't we? We should try to do that. And this provides us with the opportunity to do what we need to do to keep quality staff, as well as gives us, as Commissioner Gaines says, a little bit of time to build up our revenue capabilities to fund it ourselves going forward. Any other questions for David? All right, county manager report. You might as well just stay there.
Yes, sir. Okay. So anyway, you got the key indicator reports for the month of July, as well as any of the agreements and contracts that were signed that are in that packet. The fire department had its ISO review this week. I know we've talked about that, and obviously with Station 8 coming online, the chief can speak to that. Obviously, will have an impact on the ISO, and the new ISO ratings will be released in about 3 to 6 months. So you'll get that report as well. Chief, you want to speak anything to how that you thought that review went, or?
Yeah, I'll answer any questions. We had our ISO evaluation was actually supposed to occur in 2020, but due to COVID, they delayed it. They just started back their in-person, so we were one of their first
Yeah.
in-person.
I was gonna ask you if they actually came out or if they just wanted you to send them boxes of paperwork.
We did a lot of pre-stuff in the months leading up
Yeah.
to it because they were really unsure. And he said, I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to come or not. We'll let you know. He called about 3 weeks ago, said, hey, we'll be there on this date. And they showed up today. So I spent the better half of pretty much all day today kind of going through that. It's pretty, looks pretty good for us. But obviously, they've got to get in there and crunch the numbers and everything. But hopefully we'll get that report back in the next 3 to 6 months.
And that particular area around Ada's ISO 10, now I believe there's a little hole with the 10.
Yeah, we still have some
Whoa.
pockets in the county that, we have some ISO challenges, but as the big part.
That covered a big hole though.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
It covered a
Yeah, there are
large
3
part.
now.
Yeah.
The big takeaways for ISO, water and staffing. Those are the 2 biggest ones. Water, we don't control a lot. Obviously, we come to you all when Etowah extends the water mains, but the staffing part of it, your initial deployment to an incident is really significant.
Well, and the end recipient, not only do they have more responsive emergency services, but they will notice a great impact in their homeowners insurance.
That's it.
So I've heard.
Chief,
From
Chief,
10
when
to
you're up
3,
there,
yeah.
I'm gonna talk about
Big
Station
time.
8 too. I actually got, and you get points on fire prevention and safety, but I got a picture of a happy little girl that was smiling, and the guys and girls at Station 8 gave her a fire hat and made her day, and somebody sent me a picture and a phone call, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's multiple things to that rating, yes. that They have
As
to go
soon as
through.
you know it, you let us know.
He will.
I can't wait.
Lord, what it is.
No, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
It'll be fun.
It can only be better.
That's right.
I hope so. It'll be better for those people for sure.
Okay, and then the public, for public's use, public budget hearings are next week, start next week. Tuesday, August the 24th through Thursday, August the 26th, from 9 a.m. to noon, each day here in the Assembly Room. And the public is invited to attend those. And then this is something that's kind of bittersweet, but Jameson's final BOC meeting is today. His last day with Dawson County will be August the 27th. We will wish him well. Like I said, it's bitter that he leaves, but it's sweet that we wish him, and I'm sure he'll be very successful wherever he lands. So I just wanted to let you know that. And I'll answer any questions.
Questions for the county manager?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. County attorney report, Ms. Davis.
I do not have a public report, but we do have a few items for executive session, including litigation and personnel. And land.
Litigation
All three subject.
And
matters.
land acquisition,
Personnel.
good.
and land acquisition.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines, seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that is approved 4-0. We will take about 3 minutes to meet back in executive session in the back. Okay. It's 5:16.